I've been working the night shift at 7-Eleven for about a month now. It's not exactly my dream job, but I'm thankful for the opportunity, especially considering my past. I was released from prison only a few months before I was hired, so I feel very lucky to have any job. Without going into too much detail, it's fair to say that I've made some mistakes. Life is all about new beginnings, though. At least that's what I tell myself. I was the only employee in the store, which is typical for the night shift at this location. There would usually only be a few customers per hour. When there were no customers, I would clean and organize the shelves, and still have a lot of time to screw around on my phone. The store is in a rough neighborhood, and the pay isn't great. However, the one good thing about this location is that it has a state-of-the-art security system, including several high-definition cameras that are placed throughout the store. My boss installed them after a robbery that took place before I was hired. I often stand behind the counter watching the screen. It's a habit of mine. If there's a screen within my sight, I can't look away. It doesn't even matter what's on. Maybe it's because I watched too much TV as a child. I don't know. I forgot all about the screen, however, when a man entered the store. The automatic doors slid open and revealed a tall, thin man in a flowing cloak. His gray skin was papery, with deep cracks and wrinkles. An unmistakable look of agony was present on his face. He walked through the door slowly and approached the counter where I stood in shock. "Hello, sir? How can I help you?" I said, trying to pretend that he was a regular customer. He didn't say a word, just stared at me with bloodshot eyes. Strangely, the man seemed familiar, as if we had met before. But I'm sure I would have remembered someone like this. This man looked like death himself. We stood there in an ominous stalemate for several seconds, but it felt like hours. He didn't move. In order to break the tension, my eyes wandered to the screen with the security footage. My heart sank when I saw that the man wasn't there. I could see myself standing at the counter, facing an empty store. When I looked up, the man was still there, still staring at me with a strangely familiar face. His lifeless skin sagged from his face like it was melting. I must be hallucinating, I thought. This can't be real. I closed my eyes tightly and wished for him to disappear. When I opened my eyes, he was leaning forward, with both hands firmly planted on the counter. His stare was intense in a way that I had never experienced before. It was like he was looking into my soul, like he could see everything inside me. My fears, my insecurities, my past, present, and future. I could feel him searching through my memories, replaying entire segments of my life. Everything stopped when we came to my crime. A robbery where my getaway car struck and killed an innocent pedestrian. Remorse flooded my body, and I began to shake. That is when I realized why the man looked so familiar. He was that pedestrian. Just then, the man faded away into thin air. I can only speculate on why he decided to visit me. Perhaps he was looking for closure. Maybe revenge. My guess is that when he felt my remorse, he decided to show me mercy. I can never undo what I have done. All I can do is try to move on. This happened about 5 years ago. I was a recent college graduate, and I was constantly trying to prove myself at work. I always wanted to be the last one to leave the office, so my boss would notice me. Therefore, I often ended up driving home when it was already dark. I was about halfway home when I noticed that my gas tank was almost empty. Luckily, there was a 7-Eleven coming up on the right, and it looked open. I drive this way almost every day, but I hadn't stopped there before. My car pulled up to the pump, and I started to fill up the tank. There was an eerie silence in the air. I was the only one there. The only sign of life was the fluorescent light coming from the store on the other side of the parking lot. The pump made a loud click to indicate that my tank was full. I looked down at my watch and noticed the time. It was 9:45 p.m. I really need to start leaving earlier, I said to myself. I let out a big yawn and started walking to the store to pay for the gas. The big glass doors slid open as I approached the entrance. I stepped inside and looked around. The room was empty. I stood in front of the entrance for a few seconds, expecting an employee to walk out from the back. Having worked the late shift in retail before, I knew how it was. You hang out in the back, and when a customer comes in, you rock, paper, scissors with your coworker to see who goes out. But nobody came. Starting to feel uneasy, I slowly approached the counter, still expecting to be greeted by an employee. Standing in front of the counter, I looked around. "Hello, is anyone there? I just need to pay for the gas," I said impatiently, hoping someone would hear me and come out. I assumed that the high school kids who work this shift were just taking their time when I noticed something terrifying. I saw 2 small red drops of what looked like blood on the counter. Something wasn't right. Just then, someone emerged from the back room. He was a scruffy-looking man in his 40s, far from the teenager that I was expecting. He approached the till and conveniently placed his left hand over the drops on the counter.
"Can I help you, sir?"
he mumbled. Yes, I just need to pay for the gas," I said awkwardly. My spidey sense was tingling. I didn't believe that this man worked here, but the safest thing to do would be to pay for the gas and then call the police afterwards from the road.
Sure,"
he said. He started pushing buttons on the computer. It was obvious he didn't know what he was doing. A bead of sweat dropped from his forehead, and he looked up at me.
"How much do you know?"
he grumbled. "Nothing," I said. "I just want to pay and leave."
"I'm afraid it's too late for that."
Then he pulled out a gun and pointed it directly at me. My whole body trembled as I raised my hands in the air. I didn't beg for my life. It's not that I'm too proud, I just couldn't find the words.
"It's not personal,"
he said, laughing.
"Any last words?"
Then I heard a shot from behind me, and the man dropped to the floor. I turned around and saw a police officer with a smoking gun. They arrived just in time. After I calmed down, I discussed the evening's events with the officer. "The cashier must have triggered the alarm just before they killed him," said the officer. "He saved my life, and I'll never get a chance to thank him," I replied. This was the closest I have ever come to death. It has made me realize that there is much more to life than work. From then on, I always made sure to leave the office with enough time to enjoy my life, because you never know which day will be the last. There's a road that I drive almost every day. It's an old country road. The surface is somewhere between dirt and paved. Kind of like it was paved a long time ago but was so worn down over time that it returned to gravel. My house is just off this road, so I use it to get almost everywhere. Work, groceries, and everything in between. I'm a single female living alone in a fairly rural area. Some would find that unusual, but I've always been very independent, and I'm a lot tougher than I look. There isn't much out here other than a 7-Eleven, where I'm a regular customer. I was coming home from work one day and decided to stop for gas. As I approached the parking lot, I noticed a dark black pickup truck that I'd not seen before. It had tinted windows and some kind of customized wheels that looked way too big. I didn't think much of it at the time. It was unusual to see unfamiliar vehicles around here, since it's a small and tight-knit community, but it did happen occasionally. I drove up to one of the pumps and got out of my car. As I was filling my tank, a man approached me from the truck. He was an older middle-aged man, probably in his 50s. He wore a neat button-down shirt with ripped jeans. An odd combination, I thought. I didn't pay attention, I just focused on my car. He kept at least a 10-foot distance between us, and I could tell through my peripheral vision that he was looking at me. Not sure what he wanted, I ignored him. Once my tank was full, I paid for the gas and drove away. Around halfway home, I noticed the truck in my rearview mirror. I couldn't see the driver, but I was sure that it was the truck from the 7-Eleven. I almost drove into a ditch when I realized that he was following me. What scared me the most was how close we were to my house. I can't let him know where I live, I said to myself out loud. I turned down a random road to see if he would follow. To my horror, he did. He was keeping about a 5-car distance between us at the moment. Once we were back on the main road, I decided to drive to the police station. I hoped that would scare him away. As I neared the station, the truck disappeared into the distance. Even though nothing actually happened, I filed a police report anyway. The lieutenant is a friend of mine. I teach piano to his son, so he was very accommodating and took the matter seriously. However, he did say that there was likely nothing they could do. It's impossible to know the intentions of this man. He could have just been a lonely guy with poor social skills, or it could have been something much worse. I haven't seen him around since, and I hope that never changes. When I was in high school, my friends and I all wanted to get part-time jobs. Besides the money, I guess we saw it as a way to feel more grown up. We were only 14 years old at the time, and it was difficult to find work because kids of that age were seen as too irresponsible. Lucky for me, I landed an interview at the 7-Eleven near the school, and I got the job, making me the first of our group to start working. My shifts were always after school until 9 p.m., when the night crew came in. We worked in twos. My co-worker Andrew was only a year or two older than me, and he had the job of training me. We worked together for a few weeks when I found out that Andrew was quite a slacker. He would disappear for hours at a time while we were supposed to be working. I didn't say anything because I was the new guy and I didn't want to start any trouble. That and things were pretty laid back with Andrew, so I didn't want to risk ending up with someone who was more strict. It was a Tuesday evening, and like usual, Andrew had taken off to see a girl or something. That was fine with me since it was a slow night and there was not much work to do anyway. A few customers trickled in throughout my shift, but there were long stretches where I was the only one there. It had been about an hour since anyone came into the store when I started to hear noises from the back room. There is a room at the back of the store where we keep boxes of extra stock. The employee bathroom is back there, and there is an exit too. At first, I thought the building could be infested with rats, but as I continued to listen, it sounded way too big. Starting to feel scared, I decided to go back there in order to set my mind at ease. I walked to the door and opened it. That is when I saw a man's head peering at me from behind a stack of boxes. He was a young man, probably early 20s. He had a thin face with an angry scowl. He just stared at me. It didn't even seem like he was trying to hide. I was too shocked to move. All of a sudden, he came out from behind the boxes, and I could see he was holding a knife. I quickly backed out of the room and into the main area of the store. I used all of my might to hold the door closed. I could feel him slamming into the door, trying to force it open. With one hand, I managed to call the police while holding the door. Fortunately, they arrived only minutes later and arrested the guy. When Andrew returned, I gave him an earful for leaving me alone. "We work in teams for safety, not because it's too much work," I said to him. He seemed remorseful and apologized profusely. I accepted his apology and even acknowledged my part of the blame for enabling his behavior. From what I heard, the intruder got only 6 months for breaking and entering. In my opinion, that's way too light for what he did. That knife had bad intentions written all over it. But I guess he took a plea deal or something. I'm not too sure about how all that legal stuff works. I worked there for another year or so until I found another job that pays a little more. If you work in retail, remember that there's safety in numbers. If you're lucky enough to work in pairs, then always watch out for each other, because you never know when you're going to need it.